Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of That's Iowa Football. I'm your broadcaster today, Bryce Williams, a senior over at South O'Brien. I do the play-by-play, the huddle/YouTube, depending on the sport, of course. And I decided to start this up because I want to go into the passion of broadcasting, and I decided what better way to do that than start my own broadcast aside from my work. So with that, we'll jump right into the heart of it. That's Iowa Football with Bryce Williams. Sibley Ocheyedan Generals beat the South O'Brien Wolverines 28-22 on Friday night, largely fueled by Kane Julius and that dominant Sibley offense that like to run that option, the gun split set, which is essentially where they have the quarterback lined up and then they have a running back and a receiver each to the left. So if you each to the left and right. So if you watch the NFL, the closest resembling offense to that would be the 49ers. Brock Purdy can either choose to give it to Deebo Samuel or pass it to Christian McCaffrey or give it off to McCaffrey. It really just opens the opportunity. Take in the 49ers offense, put in like McCaffrey or give it off to McCaffrey. It really just opens the opportunity. Take in the 49ers offense, put in like a Josh Allen type quarterback. That's essentially the Sibley Ocheyedan offense. So they played phenomenal. We'll start off with them. Kane Julius went 11 for 21, 167, a touchdown, and a pick. And although those are pretty solid QB stats considering the high school, you add in 9 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown on the ground. It really just elevates the quarterback's game. Just like Lamar, he may not have the most impressive air raid game, but he will always add to his game with his running back stats or his rushing stats. Kaufman now for the Generals. He ran the ball 15 times for 47 yards and a touchdown. Adding on to that, 2 catches, 23 yards. Then we switch over to Dawson Byer, who had 6 carries, 22 yards, a catch, and 2 yards. Byer, he wasn't necessarily always going to be in the game to get the ball, but he was a very good decoy. And then later into the game, they subbed in his brother, I believe, Easton Byer, who he got a couple touches for 4 yards. They really did a great job distributing the ball throughout the game, making the Wolverines have to guess what they're going to be running next. Now with that, Will Grease, I believe his name is Tanner Grease, he had 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown coming off of, I believe it was a shot from the red, just inside the red zone or just before. And it was a shot to the end zone, and it was him versus Billy Lang in coverage. And Billy Lang played that, he playing in his left backer spot. Played that about as good as he could, but you put a 6'6" tight end out there and being guarded by 5'6" linebacker, you're obviously going to get that mismatch, and Kane Julius took advantage of that and lobbed that one up, and Grease tipped it into his own hands, and that's what it became. So Billy Lang did end up getting moss on the play, but not much he could really do. Now the big part of this Ocheyedan offense, although he did not score, Dawson Krakis really just took this Wolverines secondary deep. You take a cornerback who's proven to be solid, proven to make plays on a ball, Derek Paulson, and Krakis was on him on both sides of the ball. On defense, he had a great 4th down play where he just dived and put his arms out and swatted the ball down from Riedemann to Paulson, which ultimately the Wolverines did not end up getting the ball back, so that became the game winner, you could look at it as. But you add on the offensive side, he had 4 catches, 109 yards, but no touchdowns, but he just moved the chains for the Generals. Could have added on, or also could have also added a Julius interception, another one, so he would have had 2 interceptions. There was an early play in the game. Derek Paulson jumps up for the ball. He read it perfectly about the most fundamentally sound play you can make from that corner spot. Just jumped up and went straight through the diamond. And luckily, Krakis thought that was going to be picked. So he also put his arms down for just a second to get ready to tackle Paulson. And it went through Paulson's hand and off of the face mask of Krakis. That one fell to the ground, and I believe the Generals punted. Now we switch over to the defensive side of things for the Generals. A big problem for the Wolverines offense that night was Gage Greenfield. Big guy, 6'5", 330 is what he comes in as. He wreaked havoc throughout the game. 7.5 tackles, a tackle for loss and a half, which that gets really iffy because technically you can't have a tackle for loss and a half. Same thing with a tackle. You can't really have a tackle and a half. But high school stats. He's your ideal nose tackle. Both teams have a very, on paper, great nose tackle situation. And Gage Greenfield, he's 6'5", 330. And the Wolverines put a guy, Jackson Weir, out there who's round, give or take 30 pounds less than that, and maybe take away an inch or two. And he's pretty much just an inch shorter and 30 pounds lighter than this Gage Greenfield. But at the end of the day, they're both the most solid nose tackles you think of. They're never really going to get a sack. But what they do is they plug that hole. They stop the running back from going from a fullback dive or halfback dive, 21-22 dive for you football players, to making it bounce out and fundamentally take down the play. You see that a lot with Greenfield and Weir. They both tend to do that. Weir ended up getting in on a sack or a big blow up in the game later on in the game, I believe, and did just that. And for Greenfield, it was that way consistently throughout the night. Now, Gavin Stanton, his inside lineman partner, he had 5 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a sack. He was also... Gage Greenfield is such a big guy, and coming up against a rather small Wolverines offensive line, you have to double team. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He would be facing Ashton Hunt, who's about a 5'9", 205 if I had to center, which that's on the shorter side of centers, about what the weight you want for high school, of course, Northwest Iowa High School. But you put 6'5", 330 up against that gets tough. Same thing with Tegan Barenfoos. I'd give probably about a 6'1", 6'2", around the 180 to 200 pound mark. But those two together have to absolutely double team Greenfield. You can't put Miller on Greenfield because that takes away from the play, because there are other Generals you also have to worry about. And Jackson Weir, he does not play the offensive line for the Wolverines. So you really are restricted to who to put on him. That opens up the door for Stanton to come down and blow up plays, get in the backfield, always wreak some havoc, even cause some pressure on Brady. Van Weston, much of the same. He's just the leftovers of what everyone else created, coming off the edge, picking up tackles. Elzer and Dawson Byer also had 5.5 tackles on the day. Now for this general special teams, a punt return from Tate Marco of 1 return, 12 yards. Very nice return average right there. You want about a 6 to 7, getting 12. I mean, how much a 5-yard increase or decrease takes away from a drive. Kane Julius, punter, linebacker, running back, quarterback, whatever you want him to be, he is. He punted the ball 4 times for 102 yards, averaging about 25.5 yards per punt. But now the big part of the special teams is Kaufman. He only took 1 return, but that return ended up being a big one. 1 return, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Now we switch over to the Wolverines side of things. Brady Riedemann, he went 7 for 20, about a 35%, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 carries for 13 yards. Now right there, you're slinging the ball a lot. The Wolverines kind of had to do this type game because you can't really the middle, and the tackles, although they're not the weakest, aren't exactly the strongest, especially up against this general defensive line that very much outsizes the Wolverines' offensive line. They have to create plays, and you just can't afford to run the ball as much when you got guys like Gage Greenfield up front. With that 35% is by no means what you want to have. But the 81 yards, about 10.2 an attempt, 10.5 maybe, 2 touchdowns, that is what you want to see from the junior. Jaden Kreber was the big effect in the run game, him and his counterpart Jordan Jettis. Kreber had 14 carries, 82 yards, and no touchdowns. And his co-partner, the fullback Jordan Jettis, had 14 carries, 51 yards, and he had a catch. They both had a catch. Kreber had a catch for 0 yards. It was dead at the line of scrimmage. And Jordan Jettis had a check down play that went for about 6 yards. So each not a big factor of this air raid game, but a major factor and a major improvement off of last week's ball game. Of course, the one game of this Wolverine season, one of the first 2 games, I know that they had 17 carries, 19 yards. No matter what level that is not really acceptable, but the Wolverines have worked towards that and decided to move on and give a new chance to offense, much going with the rollouts a lot more and really letting Brady Reedman cook, to be frank. And the 2 big parts in offense, Brody Van Beek had a run himself for 5 yards, about halfway. No coach will get a 5-yard run. But he had 3 catches, 21 yards and a touchdown. One of the touchdowns that Reedman threw, and the other touchdown going to Derek Paulson, who had 2 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Although this score shows 6 points, this game, I swear to you, up in the booth press box and anyone that was there playing on the field or even in the stands, if you watch this game really felt like a 6-point game, or a 2-3-point, the way each side was playing the positions. I mean, the Wolverines even went for a fake punt from their own 7. It got about 4 yards, not from their own 7, but it was a 4th and 7 fake punt situation. They go with a little sweep out, and that just didn't quite make the line of scrimmage. So they gave it up at about the 40, 45 on plus territory. So Sibley got it on their own 45. So then you switch over to the defensive side of things for the Wolverines. Jackson Weir was a big impact in this one. 5 tackles and a tackle for loss and a half. Like I said, this was a battle on defense of the nose tackles. Can the nose tackles pick up their guys and plug the hole? And they both did exactly that. The only reason the Generals got a good amount of rushing yards on the paper is because Julius, you can't really do anything about that, especially since he's an option quarterback. There's 2 guys you're left vulnerable to, and with Julius, you want to hedge the quarterback. But with an athlete like Julius, it's almost impossible to contain him. So that's why he ended up with 93 yards on the day. Caden Whitrock, 5 tackles, 2 for loss there. He coming in from his linebacker spot. He was all over the field. He even played a good amount of offensive line for the Wolverines. And really just, you think about him, he's one of those first in, last out guys. He's always going to look to help the teammate. And he's he always a very low-key guy. He's the guy you want in the locker room. Reese Lundquist coming off the edge, had a tackle and a half of it being tackle for loss. Reese Lundquist, he's about 6'6", 175, 185, around that range. Great basketball player. He's got the basketball genetics there. Really an athlete himself. Now with him being, some of the times he'll overshoot the plays, just grab them too high, because other than that, he's got to swing low and get them. And that's just a little wonky, standing 6'6", trying to tackle a guy that's maybe 5'11", 6 feet. That's big difference, football field. Jordan Jennis, he was at last point last week for guys that have played 2 games in the state of Iowa. He was 3rd in tackles. I know he's averaging about 13, probably now 12 after the game last Friday. But he had 9.5 tackles, a sack, and 3 tackles for loss. He's your ideal Mike linebacker. He's going to blitz, he's going to create pressure and do everything he can to disrupt that play. Now with that, Jordan Dennis, you will see him. He will gamble an entire play, and he will be 10 yards away from the ball. But those make up for it when he blows up a play 6 yards in the backfield. And he's going to change the play, whether it's good or for bad, no matter what. Which, as a gambling man myself, I appreciate that type of playing style. Not to mention, that good of a 2-sided ball player right there, putting up 3 tackles for loss and then also getting your team 51 yards on the ground game, that's beautiful football right there. Now for Derek Paulson, he had 5 tackles, although that's not the main point of this defensive aspect. He had an interception on 55 yards, but he got hawked down by a offensive lineman for the Generals. And the main reason with Paulson, he's got that track speed. He can go from 1 to 60 in seemingly seconds, it seems like. But this Wolverines team is only 32 men deep. So there is no C team. There's no strict C team. So you got starters that are going to be playing C team and JV. That's the whole team varsity, 32 men. So you reach that, you got 11 people you need to play each ball. When you got 32, that means you got 10 reserves. So no matter what, they're going to have to put guys out there. And also on some plays that they need to rest the starters, they're going to have to play their starters since it's such a crucial spot in the game. Like, of course, the Wolverines wouldn't want Paulson. I mean, I would assume that even 33 guys, they would not stick Derek Paulson out there for the punt and kick return. They'd probably send out a Brody Van Beek or a Gabe Mormon to do that. You want Derek Paulson to get all of his rest, and as well as all the starters. You don't want those guys on special teams. Now, with that, the Wolverines give up a lot of yards on special teams. This Wolverine defense going into this last game was only giving up about 47 yards a drive against Sheldon. But with that, when their punt return gives up about 20 to 30 a play, I mean, that sets you in. So although you're only giving up 40 yards per drive, though that 40 yards results in points, and that's the killer. But at the end, the coaching staff and everybody knows for the Wolverines that there's nothing they can do about it. It's just football. Iowa football. Van Beek took one back to the house to put a score on the game. I believe it was about 75 yards as well. Riedemann punted the ball 3 times for 85 yards, a higher average than Julius, but he booms them away. Now, Derek Paulson, also the kicker, he went 1 for 2 on his PATs. Now, that puts the game, let's just say he makes both of them. Of course, football is always hypothetical. Now it is a 28-23 ball game. Nothing really changes there. But here's the point where it changes. Let's just say you have to trade out. You either make 1 PAT, 2 field goals, or 2 PAT and 1 field goal. That if you take that 2 field goal path, right, you make an additional field goal. Now it becomes a 28-25 ball game. From when the Wolverines and Paulson decide to throw it deep, read him into Paulson. Krakis made the diving effort there to swat his hands out, and that ended up ending the game essentially, although there was still 3.5 minutes on the clock. The Wolverines never got the ball back. Let's just say Paulson makes that kick, which it was a decent long kick. It hit the crossbar there. It was about a 39-40 yard kick. And this hypothetical third kick when they were on 4th down late in the game, that's around the same exact range. So if Paulson makes that first one, I guarantee it that the Wolverines trot him out there that second time, and now it becomes a 28-25 ball game with Paulson coming up to the line, or coming up to the field goal in a spot to tie the game. But with that, you can always say the what ifs at the end of the game. Now, the biggest part of this game was that, it's homecoming. It's your homecoming. You always win your homecoming. And for me, what sucks is I did not go to homecoming my freshman year, in which that was the last game we won. But my sophomore year lost to Galen in an unfortunate series of events. Last year, we lost to Alta, I believe. And then this year we lose to Sibley. All to the first and third game. So my sophomore and senior year were close games. Alta was not. Alta, about halfway through the first quarter, you're just like, okay, we got homecoming after this, to look forward to. But with with the homecoming celebration, the side, they're getting the crowd ready. Everyone's showing up, and the Wolverines had a packed crowd for being 0-2 up to this point. Start to see that dip in attendance. But what really fired up the crowd at the pep rally was Coach Furman came out and made a statement during his play. And as you see going on the bottom, he said, "Today is Friday the 13th, for those of you that may know. But for the Generals, it's nightmare on Willow Street." Furman being so close to that panning out, of course now if the Generals want to run away with it, that door opens that they can run away. But I doubt that they even know he said it, but not like it matters. Coach Furman's a very class act guy. Even if they did hear about host stuff, Coach Furman's class act, he will not care at the end of the day. And you got to respect that out of coach. Now, taking that into consideration, this game hurts, especially to the senior players, every player that played, and even the ones bench. This is one of those games where I think you could go back and play every single ball game, every single snap over again and still walk out the same result. I mean, it wasn't that the Wolverines did anything bad. Like, they did something to the point where the Generals took advantage of an opportunity. The Generals just frankly played better football. And those are the ones that hurt the most because going into film, there's nothing that goes, oh, Sheldon, the big thing was, switch halftime, the not getting the going. You could look at that and go, we need to do that, and they fixed that. This game, you just kind of have to go on to next week and have a very tough upcoming week playing Marcus Meriden Klangcord Remsen Union at home, which I will be covering that ball game over on Huddle. Link is in the description, and channel link if you want to go take a listen live every Friday at about 7 o'clock. Tune in 15 minutes early for a little pregame. But if for those fans that may watch this that don't attend the game, it's always good. I'm not just saying this because I'm the guy, of course, but it's always good to just show your support. Toggle in online. I mean, heck, you could be doing other stuff and playing in the background, knowing what's going on. I mean, I know countless people that already do that. Of course, with the move from YouTube to Huddle, that changes a lot, but I'm hoping to bring the Huddle aspect of the viewers that are missing that to the stuff that they miss at the game. I'm hoping to bring that here and offer something that Huddle cannot. But with that, that is everything for this first episode. Next week, we'll be on the MMCRU game here at home in Polina, 7 o'clock this upcoming Friday, the 20th. I'm your broadcaster today, Bryce Williams, signing off, and thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, do whatever you want. But one thing, just your support for the Wolverines.